We'll start with a half a butterfly. So taking the right leg out straight, left foot to the inside of the thigh. This is probably the pose that I start more sequences with than any other. It's a great way to start a yin practice. So we just relax into it, let the upper body, let the back round. Unless you've got a spine injury or something going on, then maybe that's not safe for you. But for most people, we just let that back round. Again, notice my hands, not trying to grab the foot, not trying to pull down. This pose can and probably should be approached in a completely relaxed manner. So if you need support for safety, that's fine. Something under the knee, something under your forehead, forearms, that's fine. But pulling yourself down isn't necessary. And if it is, if you're not getting a stretch, then let me know and I'll give you a different posture to do when the rest of us do this particular shape. But for most people, that's not necessary. I had a girl in class last night and she was a dancer and she needed more. So that's usually the case. If someone is a dancer, a contortionist, a gymnast, then they may need a little more to get a stretch. But this is pretty rare. This is pretty rare. Most of us, this is a perfectly good hamstring stretch. In addition to that, we are bringing the spine into flexion. So again, this is why we don't want the spine straight, because this is actually creating a therapeutic stress in the spine. Usually people will feel it here, not so much here. There's still stuff happening, even though you may not really feel it, okay? So we don't want to pull down and feel a stretch here. We just let it be here, and we just let whatever we feel here, as long as it's safe, let that happen. Let's switch sides. This is the half butterfly. Again, we're looking for a stretch in the back of the left thigh. All right, so we're going to rebound. So we come up and then back onto our back, and we take a few moments in stillness just to feel the spine and the hips. As I think I was mentioning last time we practiced together, when I come out of that, I often feel my spine. When I'm in it, I feel my legs. And that's because generally while we're doing a stretch, we're going to feel the muscles. And then the joints, if we're healthy, we generally don't feel them. So again, if you have a back injury, you might feel your back in that pose. If you don't, there may not be any sensation, but then when you come out of it, you might feel it in your back. So I'll report what I'm feeling. I feel it in my SI joint, my sacroiliac joint, which is the lowest part of where the spine is meeting the pelvis, what's called the ilia. So that's sacroiliac joint. There's a joint there. There's two sides to it, and I'm feeling it on my right side. So again, it's very interesting if we pay attention when coming out of these postures, how what we feel can be different from one day to the next, 1 week to the next, and what that's telling us about the condition of our body. It may not be different, but at this stage in my life, I find it changes a lot. And it can go from very pleasant one day, and then maybe a few days later, a week later, same pose, feel very different in my body. And this is important. I think, again, especially the age that I am, in my late 40s, a lot of things are starting to change and shift, and potentially break down. This is often where many people begin to have problems with their health and their body. So it's important for me to keep on track of these, on top of these. Okay, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze. We're just going to shake it out. And then our next posture will be a cattail. I'm trying to think. Okay, so we'll take the left leg, bring it up, drop it all the way over to the right. It can be straight or bent. Okay, that's pretty much up to you. Prop our head up on the right hand, elbow. And then we take the right leg and scoot it back as much as you can. And then you bend the knee, reach back and grab the foot, pull it in. And you're looking for a stretch in the front of your right thigh. Interestingly, I was just mentioning my SI joint. I feel it here as well in this posture. So again, it could be the start of something. Sometimes it's also the end of something. Sometimes when we feel stuff like that, it is something that was already injured, a problem that we had, and it's resolving itself, and there's some shifting and pain that goes in with that. So left leg, straight or bent, high or low. Straighter and closer to your face is more intense. So I've kind of split the difference. I have my knee bent, but I've hiked it way up. If I wanted more, again, I would begin straightening that leg. But this is plenty for me. Okay. Head, I am going to have it on my hand for now, but I could put it on my upper arm. I could rest it on a block or a blanket, even on the ground. Okay. This is the first of our 2 twists. So laying back will give you a deeper twist. Again, that really makes me feel that SI joint, the low part of my spine. It's not pleasant. It definitely feels like there are things that are trying to resolve in that area. And many of you know, I had those classes where Matt demoed for me, and then I think we had Matt demo both times. I don't know if I had to skip a class. I don't think I did. But, you know, I had those back issues over the summer. That was quite surprising because in the early part of the pandemic, I spent some time working on my back, and I had had a back injury previously. Some of you weren't taking my class at that time. I had to move, and so I moved on my own, kind of short notice, and had to move a lot of boxes, carry a lot of stuff, and it just really did a number on my back. So it took me about, I think, 1.5 years to fully heal that. Again, if I were younger, maybe I would have healed much more quickly. Maybe I wouldn't even have had a back issue. I don't know. Very common in our culture, though. And so even despite being a yoga teacher, which I honestly don't know if being a yoga teacher is the best thing for your health, doing yoga is. And your assumption might be, oh, well, you're a yoga teacher, so you do a lot of yoga. Yes, and I also, because I teach yoga, have to do certain things physically that isn't the best for me. This is a choice I make consciously, so it's just part of the way that I teach. But when I teach online, I do most of the class with you guys, so I warm up and I do all the things. But when I teach live, I don't do that. I was trained not to do that. So that's called teaching from your mat. And when you're in person with people, I was taught that you circulate around the room, you look at people, you're not doing the class, right? So you're not doing all the poses. But if I don't show people the hardest poses, they're often confused because they may not be able to do it, and they may need to see an example before they can do it. So once they've seen it, a lot of times it's easier for people. So a lot of times I'm demonstrating the hardest posture in the class without really warming up properly, without stretching properly, without doing all the things that I should do. So this is a little bit of an occupational hazard. And again, you know, I could take time before class to try and warm up. It's questionable whether or not I would still be warmed up by the time I demonstrated the posture. I usually teach in a hot room, so that does help warm me up a little bit. I will do some of the warm-ups with the class, usually, again, to demonstrate. But having said all that, I do think there is a certain amount of just kind of what I'll call occupational hazard that comes with teaching yoga. So I think there's some good stuff. Again, it keeps me in this world. I stretch probably more often than your average American, you know, yada, 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 but there are certain occupational hazards. So just keep that in mind if you're ever like, well, you know, if Douglas is telling us this stuff, but he hurt his back, then he must not know what he's talking about. Yeah, there's, you know, that could be true, but there's also, again, just certain side effects from my occupation that are hard to avoid. All right, let's go ahead and switch sides. So we'll come back onto our back. I'm going to turn just so I can face the camera, but you won't need to do that. Ooh, definitely feeling that area in my back today. Okay, so we bring the right leg up, drop it over to the left. Same exact thing. This is the cattail pose. Okay, and then we bring this foot in. We're looking for a stretch at the front of the left thigh. So anyway, I had hurt my back moving, essentially. Again, there are probably other factors in there. Age, maybe other injuries or dysfunctions in my body that I didn't know about. So when I say dysfunctions, what I'm talking about is things like tightness, muscle tightness, or tightness around a joint. So in our country, we often think if you're not in pain, then you're healthy. But I challenge this point of view. I don't think that just the fact that you're not in pain means that you're perfectly healthy. There can be a lot of things going wrong in your body before you become aware of them. For instance, also things like having to be on medications all the time. Are we really healthy if we have to be on some kind of pharmaceutical just to be okay? I'm not saying you should stop taking your drugs if you need them, but a truly healthy person just is sort of self-sustaining, just sort of are good on their own. So there's a lot of things where, if we can't touch our toes, is that someone who's healthy? If we can't do a squat, is this really someone who's healthy? Squatting is one of the most normal human movements. It's just a very natural, fundamental human movement. And yet many Americans lose their ability to squat. So again, if you can't squat, I'm not attacking you personally. It's very common. It's very common just because of our lifestyle and our choices. But with education and learning certain things, we can begin to see how things like this are not ideal for our health. Squatting has a really important effect on pelvic floor health. And especially for women, this is a big issue. Again, often a little later in life, but it often eventually becomes an issue for us. Many of us want to live a long, happy life, right? So, but many of us don't think of what it takes to maintain our body throughout our life to stay healthy. So this is sort of my point. If I'm 20 and I'm free of pain, then I might think I'm healthy. Is that true? There might be a lot of things happening in my body, a lot of things that have started, right? And that I'm starting to lose my flexibility. Maybe I'm starting to get buildup of cholesterol in my arteries. Maybe I'm beginning to develop type 2 diabetes. Maybe I'm obese, things like this. These things can start to happen to us. And we don't stay on top of them. And then at a certain point, it sort of blows up. And that's where our healthcare system tends to kick in. So many of you know I dated a surgeon, and she gave a talk once where she said, we don't have healthcare in this country, we have crisis intervention. And that's exactly right. And again, this is a surgeon, a doctor saying this. This wasn't, me or some hippie yoga person. So she was saying that our system takes care of an emergency well, right? If you're bleeding, if your heart is failing, if something is going off the rails, then the healthcare system can kick in and get you back on track. But are you actually healthy? Just because the train's not going off the track doesn't mean you're actually healthy. So again, taking care of your healthcare, true healthcare, from the thousands of years that yoga and Taoism have been influential in certain cultures, generally requires being proactive. And that's what's beautiful about all of you being here in class today, is you are being proactive. You're taking time to take care of your health. And that's what it takes. From everything I've learned and seen, it requires us to be proactive, not to wait till something falls apart, right? Not to wait till the wheels come off and then go to the mechanic and expect them to fix it. The mechanic being your doctor. All right, let's unwind from this, come back onto our back, just relax. All right, let's bring those legs in, shake it out a bit. And we'll hinge on up. Okay, next pose is the dragonfly. Half dragonfly. So legs are wide, nice and straight, pretty much as wide as we can go. And then we'll turn toward the left foot, reach down, hold the foot, and we're looking for stretch in here. Okay, these are the adductors, and then over here, these are your obliques. So we'd like to feel both today if possible. So you can grab that foot and roll your shoulder back if necessary. You can also hold a strap. Some people might even bend the knee and still feel a good stretch, okay? So interestingly, I'm now in my late 40s. I'm about 2 years away from being 50 years old. And as is often the case, at least in our culture, again, I suspect maybe it's different for Aboriginal people, people who live in a tribal society, people who live closer to nature. It might be different. Maybe not. I don't know. Be interesting to find out. But anyway, for people in our culture, this is often the case, right in our 40s, somewhere in there. It might not be at 40. At 40, really not much had changed for me from, say, even my 20s. In fact, I'd learned a lot about health and healing and working with my body. So if anything, at 40, I would say I felt better than I had in my 20s. And in my 20s, I remember feeling very sluggish a lot of the time, low energy, drowsy. I don't think I slept, had good sleeping patterns. I drank a lot more than I do today. So I was probably abusing my body quite a bit more. Yes, I had youth, so, you know, I could bounce back to a degree, but I definitely didn't feel like my body, my mind, me, that I was performing optimally by any stretch of the imagination. I just didn't know how to fix it. I didn't really know what to do. So over a lifetime, you know, you begin to learn some things maybe. So I'd learned things about diet. I'd learned things about yoga, stretching, all kinds of things. And so if anything, at 40, I think I felt maybe better than I had ever felt in my body, my health. And then I'd say probably after about 45, so maybe the last 3 years or so, 4 years, things have started showing up that don't just go away, right? So maybe when I was in my 20s, maybe I'd hurt my back, but then it would just kind of disappear on its own. And now things will show up and they don't go away. And I think most people, this is when they go to the doctor. And many people I've spoken to who do that, they will go to the doctor and then the doctor will do an MRI or a scan or something. They will try and see if there's damage, structural damage. And a lot of times there isn't. A lot of times there isn't. And so the doctor will come back and say, well, you know, you don't need surgery yet. So, and sometimes they'll say that. They'll see a little something, but it's not bad enough to recommend surgery. So they'll say, you don't need surgery yet, or I can't recommend surgery. And so they might offer, depending on how much pain the person is, they might offer them, you know, something to try and take away the pain. And as I think most of you have heard me say before, this is a little bit like removing the light bulb from the check engine light on your dashboard. So dashboard is saying check engine, right? Pain in your body is saying check something. Something isn't right. Something needs to be addressed. And then we take painkillers, we're just removing the light bulb. And I get it. I understand why you would, and I'm not saying that there might not be a situation in which I would take a painkiller. So again, nothing about what I'm saying is about criticizing anybody or putting anybody down for their choices. We all have to make the best choice that we can make. And for some people, some of the time, and again, that might include me, at times taking painkillers might be the best option. But oftentimes, the true best option is actually to look at how to actually heal the body. Let's switch sides. All right, this is the half dragonfly. So when we're thinking about things like health, the best approach is don't get sick in the first place. So that applies to me as well. I've got, some issues in my body, and the ideal situation would be that I just didn't have them to start. For me, I've done a lot of healing by hiking in nature, hiking miles and miles on a daily basis. I try and take some time throughout my day to find a trail, and I have shoes that are called minimal footwear. There are also some ones called barefoot shoes. When people hear that, they often think of those Vibram 5-finger shoes where it's like the toes are sticking out. That's just one kind of barefoot shoe. All the shoes I wear are barefoot shoes, and most of them you wouldn't necessarily know. I'm not saying they're the most fashionable shoes in the world, the most attractive shoes, but for me, health is much more important than looking fly, looking good. So I'll sacrifice a little bit of some fashion points to have footwear that helps my feet move. You have a lot of bones in your feet, more so than almost anywhere else in your body. I think the hands and the feet both have the same number of joints in them. And your feet are designed to move a lot. Modern shoes tend to be very restrictive. So I like to tell students that getting out and walking will help your health, period, full stop. So if you aren't walking daily, then you can improve your health by walking daily. This has been proven in studies. Okay, so 30 minutes of walking, 30 minutes. I try and walk, 3 to 5 miles. In fact, today I'm going to go to Stone Mountain and I'm going to try and walk the Cherokee Trail. Matt and I have done that before together. That's like 4 or 5 miles. Takes about 2 hours, depending on how quickly you're walking. So that's, part of my plan for today. But, people will say, well, I don't have time for that. I can't do that. Okay. So starting with 30 minutes, you get outside, get in the cul-de-sac, wherever you live, find a park, walk. You don't need to run. You don't need to jog. It's not about burning a ton of calories. Just get outside in nature. Well, okay, just walk. Even if you're in the city, just get out and walk. That will improve your health. Then, if you can walk in nature, better. Even if you're in a city, if you can get to the park, walk around the park, trees. Again, this is science. Just seeing the trees, inhaling the air that is generated from plants and trees. This has an effect on our brain, our nervous system, our body. This will improve your health. Again, it will improve your mood. So many things. Again, we often try and counteract effects of our lifestyle, not getting out, not being in nature. So we get depressed and then we take antidepressants. People say, oh, we have a chemical imbalance, so you need an antidepressant. But why do we have a chemical imbalance? Many of us don't ask that question. And maybe it's because we've removed something that most human beings throughout human history just were surrounded by the natural environment. So we remove that. We live in a big city. We're away from nature. It's not easy to get to the park, so we don't go. And then we find ourselves getting depressed. We sit at a desk all day working. Then we finish work, we're tired. We don't necessarily, first thing on our mind isn't, oh, I'm going to go for a walk. We then maybe sit down, watch the Netflix, eat something. It might sound like a good idea, but again, our body is looking for something else. It's needing some other input. So getting out, walking, 30 minutes, that's a start. 30 minutes in nature, even better. Wearing barefoot shoes, okay, or even being barefoot. Maybe you have an area where you can walk barefoot. May not be safe. A lot of times there's glass and things on the ground. You cut your foot. So usually you need something covering your feet, but as little, again, restriction as possible on your feet. There are many brands now that are making barefoot shoes. I think even like Nike and some of the big brands are now creating what they call their version of a barefoot shoe. All right, let's unwind from that. Swing our legs in, give them a little squeeze, shake it out. And then we finish with another twist. This is twisted roots. So I take my left knee over my right knee. I'm going to turn again so that I can, well, maybe I don't need to turn, I don't know. Left knee over the right knee, knees down to the left. Okay, and then I can play around with my arm and leg position to try and maximize the stretch. Stretching out here, potentially, outside of my hip, my glutes. I'm not feeling a lot of tension there today, so I'm going to focus more on the twist. Okay, so arm can be straight or bent, high or low. I can look in either direction. Okay, and this is called twisted roots. So again, I'm a big fan of yoga. I definitely recommend, if you have the time, to do it every day. I've got a lot of classes posted online. These yin classes, the vinyasa classes. I don't think you need to do both every day, but maybe you alternate, something like that. Great for your health, absolutely. But having said that, I think getting outside for 30 minutes is more important on a daily basis. So if you can do yoga every day, absolutely, that'll help your health. But again, I don't know that everyone has an hour every day where they can spend doing one of these classes. And I think probably getting outside daily is more important than that. So getting outside for 30 minutes, walking, that's super important. Getting, again, communing with hopefully nature. Hopefully it's not just your cul-de-sac. Maybe you can get out somewhere on a park. So 30 minutes, if it could be in nature, better. If it could be with barefoot shoes, even better. And then even better is 3 miles. Our ancestors, currently they estimate, walked about 3 to 5 miles on average in a day. So what that means is some days they might walk 12 miles. The next day or two, they might walk very few miles. It just depends. The main motivation for them to walk so far was food. So they were looking for food. It wasn't necessarily easy to find. And this is one of the big problems for us modern people. Have you ever been really hungry? It's a pretty strong motivator, isn't it? You'll do almost anything to stop your hunger. For most of us, that means pulling in to a gas station or a fast food place, ordering something, and the hunger's gone. Or opening the fridge even. It's not an ordeal for us. For our ancestors, it might mean walking for miles, trying to find foods that they could eat on the plants. It might mean walking for miles, hunting game. Not only walking for miles, but then sprinting at the end of that and trying to, kill some kind of game to eat. So movement and food were linked for our ancestors in a way that it's not today. So part of the reason why we don't feel motivated, right? How many people work at Brightfire and how many of you are here? Now, I'm not saying everyone that's not here doesn't move. They may have other ways that they move, but many Americans don't move enough. They don't exercise enough. And then honestly, when they do, they're often doing things that may not be the best choice. So some of you have heard this before, but this is what I call my Happy Meal analogy. Movement is good for you, period, for the most part. If you have no calories and you're starving on a desert island, and I give you a Happy Meal, it can save your life. That's because there are some calories and there are some nutrients in a Happy Meal. Okay? A Happy Meal isn't really good for you, but it is food. It will save you from starvation, just like a little bit of movement will improve your mood and your health a little bit. Okay? But what if that's all you could eat is Happy Meals? Every time you're hungry, you have to eat a Happy Meal. Yes, it would sustain your life for a while, but if you've ever watched the movie Super Size Me, you would start to have a lot of problems with your internal organs and other vitals in your health. Okay, so if you can imagine fries, hamburger, soda, every meal. Anytime you're hungry, you have to eat those things. All right, let's unwind. We'll do the other side. So again, this isn't really my personal opinion that a Happy Meal is bad for you. I think there's plenty of science to support that. So again, one Happy Meal is fine. If you're eating whole foods normally, vegetables, well-raised meat, you might say, that's good for you. And then you can throw a Happy Meal in every now and then, you'll be fine. But desert island, Happy Meal every day, if we went and looked at your health, there'd be a lot of problems. And depending on your age, it might eventually kill you, that diet. Happy Meal diet, Happy Meal only diet, okay? That's all you could eat. Eventually, it would save your life from starvation, but eventually it would take your life. So some exercise is like this as well. Some exercise, a little bit of it is good for you. A little bit of it is going to improve your health, improve your mood, if it's mixed in with other things. If it's all you do, then certain types of exercise can actually create problems. Now, for whatever reason, I don't know if this is everywhere or if this is just our culture, but I find people in our culture tend to get very obsessive about their exercise. So some people, the main form of exercise they get is just tennis. Other people, I remember my mother used to be obsessed with swimming. That was her main thing. She'd swim all the time. I don't know if it's because we admire athletes, and so, you know, there's this idea of I want to keep getting better and better at one thing. You know, CrossFit, I keep trying to do more and more weight, more and more reps, whatever it is. Even in yoga, some people approach yoga in the same way, which I do not recommend. I don't recommend that you set up some kind of agenda with yoga of, oh, I need to do this pose, and then I need to do that pose, and then I need to do that pose. All of you come to the other class, and in that class, my message is just do the best you can at that time. And then don't worry about a particular pose. Don't afterwards start working on the arm balance or whatever it is we did. You don't need to break down a pose and try and do that pose. Now, if a pose exposes weakness or damage in the body, address it. So this week in Vinyasa, we were doing those turbo dogs and the forearm plank and the dolphin. This can expose weakness in the shoulders and the upper body. That's not something you want in terms of your health. Again, not in terms of looking good, not in terms of impressing anybody, not in terms of doing silly yoga postures. Who cares about that? It's about bone density, muscle strength, health. Generally, as we age, we lose flexibility in the low body. We lose strength in the upper body. Great way to counteract the effects of aging is stretch this, which is exactly what we're doing. Strengthen this, which is what a lot of what we do in the Vinyasa class. Okay, it's not the only thing we do. Vinyasa class, there's a lot. We work on our balance. We try and strengthen the back and the core. There's a little bit of stretching and strengthening in the legs, but I don't think that that's really that important, honestly, from everything that I've learned. The other things are much more important. Balance, strengthening up here, you know, keeping this nice and strong, strengthening the back, strengthening the core abdominal muscles. These are things that are really, really vital. So anyway, yoga, great for you. It's varied. We're addressing the different joints and muscle groups in the body, but walking, I think, absolutely essential. So again, many of us are busy. Maybe you do 30 minutes daily. So, you know, Monday and Friday we do this. So maybe those days you can't fit in a 30-minute walk. It's fine. So maybe Monday we do Vinyasa, Tuesday walk, Thursday walk, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday you walk 30 minutes. Friday we do yin. Then Saturday and Sunday, take your family, right? This is something you can do with your loved ones. You might have to convince them to go. You might have to educate them. Hey, look, this is really important. Go and walk 3, 5, 8 miles. It might be tough at first. Walk in nature. And I can almost promise you, you will begin to feel better all round. Okay, instead of watching another television show or whatever it is that you do, see if you can find some time on the weekends. Get out for a longer walk or hike in nature. And again, feel free to ignore me. This is just my advice. All right, let's unwind. We'll come back onto our back. I always like to tell students or remind students, you know, feel free to ignore me. I'm just a yoga teacher. What do I know? And I mean that. I'm not just being flippant. So I've learned certain things. I try and share those with you in the hope that it will be valuable and it will be helpful. And if it's not, don't worry about it. You know, I'm wrong about a lot of things. So this might be another one of those things. All right, let's bring those legs in. We'll give them a little shake out. And then we'll take our rest, our Shavasana. So you come onto your back. Again, rest, proper rest, stillness, really important. So this is, again, 6 minutes. Set your timer. Just allow your body to rest for the next 6 minutes.